From Anshe Sfard, Bethel Emeth Congregation, it's time to take 10 minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to our discussion, Parshat Acharei Mot-Kedoshim, never again. We use these words, never again. But who says? How do we know it'll never be again? We've seen that indeed genocides have happened again. There was a situation, Somalia, Yugoslavia, the situation in Sudan. The idea never again, where does it come from? What about among the Jews? Could it ever, God forbid, happen again? A related question. What about the land of Israel? We know that we've been exiled from the land of Israel time and again. Can that, God forbid, ever happen again? Rabbi Soloveitchik says that in fact, we're told in the prophets that it cannot happen again, and that this very idea is found in the selection of the Haftorah this week. Because it is in this parsha, these parshiot, where it says, "V'lo takia haaretz etchem b'tamachem mota, kasher ka'at hagoy asher l'tnechem." It's in this very parsha where it says that don't engage in the various acts of immorality outlined in this parsha, because if you do, then you'll be literally regurgitated out of the land of Israel, as the nations who came before you were regurgitated for their acts of defilement of the land. The land of Israel doesn't tolerate sinners. So that's kind of a depressing point. Because after all, if ultimately somehow the Jewish people fail in their mission, so that's it. Then there is no land of Israel. Rabbi Soloveitchik claimed that this parsha is the first parsha that spells it out and says, you know what? If you fail, then guess what? You're going to Israel, but you won't stay there. Later we learn in Devarim, in Deuteronomy, we learn that that's indeed the case, but this is the first time in the Torah where we learn that there could be a Churban, destruction of the Jewish establishment in the land of Israel. Rabbi Soloveitchik says, therefore, in the Haftorah was selected from the end of Amos, Prophet Amos, where he says as follows, "Untatim al admatam, I will plant you, I will plant them, I will plant the Jews in the land of Israel, on their land, v'lo yinatshu od, me'al admatam, they'll never be uprooted again from the land, amar Hashem Elokayach." That's what God promises, the last words of Amos, that when the Jews come back and they build those desolate cities, they'll be planted there, they'll never be uprooted again. And therefore, says Rabbi Soloveitchik, that's the comfort. The role of Haftorah is to give comfort. And here we have a prophetic reading following the Torah reading, the Haftorah, and there we say, we'll never again be uprooted again. There will come a time we'll be planted in our land, and never again will we be uprooted from that land. Rav Yitzchak Isaac Herzog, the chief rabbi of Israel, in the early years, he said, in 1947, he was quoted, there will never be a third destruction. We had the first temple was destroyed, second temple, there'll never be a third destruction. In fact, they tell a story that in 1941, Rav Herzog found himself in America, and President Roosevelt at the time said to him, don't go back to Israel. The Germans are going to come and take over. And he said, no. Lo tiyeh churban shlishi, there will not be a third destruction. I know it. How does he know it? Well, we have the verses here. Once the land of Israel gives forth its fruit, that's a sign of the redemption. The hills of Israel will be so happy with all the fruit that they have. Heitifu arim asis, the produce, the fruit of the juice will be running forth from the land of Israel. And when that happens, you don't have to worry. So since the land of Israel has flourished in our time, we don't have to worry anymore. Or there's a Tanchuma Midrash on Shoftim where it says, Vashlishit yutarba, there's a pasuk, a verse that they interpret that the Shlishit in lahefsek, the third redemption, there'll be no exile, there's no stop. There's no stopping that third exile. Where else do we find this? We find this all over in Sefer Yeshayahu. Isaiah prophesies that one day there will be a redemption from which there'll be no turning back. Over and again, let me just share a few verses with you. For instance, Lo tosif li ta'od, you drank that cup of wrath. Isaiah 51, you won't drink it again. Isaiah 54, he says, Ki me noach li, it's just like God promised there would never be the flood of Noah again. At a certain point, God says, I swear not to get angry at you again. Isaiah 60, he says, Lo ya'alach Hashem es lo yomam, l'nogay reach lo yair lach. Hayah Hashem la'or olam, God will remain with you constantly. It won't be like the sun that always sets, the moon that keeps waning. The lo yavo shimshech, the sun will not set on you again. The sun never again will set on the Israeli empire, so to speak, now the Israeli country. And the moon will not wane, because Shalmu Yimei Avlech, the days of mourning will be over. Isaiah 62, he says that Lo Yamer lach od azuva la'artzech lo yamer od shmama. Never again will your land be called a bereft one. Never will be called a desolate one. That's what we will achieve that status, and we'll hold on to that status. That's what the Haftorah comes to give me that consolation that there will come a time when we'll stay there. But Professor Yeshayahu Leibovitz of blessed memory, he raised this question, and it's an annoying question. Well, if you live in the land of Israel, and you're guaranteed that you can never be uprooted from it, doesn't that lead to moral decadence? After all, isn't the premise of the Torah, what we read each day in the Shema, Vaya'im Shamoa, our connection to the land is premised on our observance of the Torah? The answer is, as Rabbi Salvation explained based on Maimonides' writings, that we know when the end of days, the Jewish people will repent. Ultimately, we'll reach the point when the prophet Hosea says, Lomo nomarod Elokeinu l'maseh, we won't worship the work of our hands, says Hosea. Yechezkel said, V'lo yitamu od b'guleihem, we won't defile ourselves anymore with those idols. So, not only do we have a promise that the Jewish people will never be uprooted again, but that's premised on the notion that indeed the Jewish people will at some point purify themselves so that it won't be worthy of God's wrath. Therefore they'll never be uprooted again. We have a belief that once the Jewish people begin to help the land of Israel flower and flourish again, then there's no turning back. Never again. We will be planted on the land and we won't be uprooted. But how can that be, we ask? What about following the mitzvot? And the answer is, we believe that eventually the Jewish people will return not only to the land of Israel, but also to the Torah of Israel. And with that winning combination, there's no being uprooted again. There'll never be a destruction again. It's a belief in God, and it's a belief in the Jewish people, and our resilience, our ability to do tshuva. And ultimately, when we do that, then we can truly rest assured that never again. Thank you for joining us here at the Acharei Mot Bethel Emeth congregation here in Memphis, Tennessee. Join us each week for our discussion of the Parsha, the various holidays. Thanks to Jason Lefkowitz for being the producer of today's show, and thanks again for coming.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein. To learn more, visit ASBEE.org.